Welcome back. And I even request the students to kindly welcome Dr. Sibananda Senapati sir and Indraneel sir for the keynote address. This address is presented by the speaker, Professor Dr. Indraneel Day, Professor and Axis Bank Chair, Institute of Rural Management, and the session is chaired by Dr. Sibananda Senapati sir, Associate Dean and Professor of Associate Dean. Requesting Sibananda Senapati sir to take the seat on the stage, please. And I request sir to kindly take the stage, please.
Student. So sir has traveled from Irma. So he has written about Bihar also. If you can search his profile, you can find recent article also about Bihar and what is happening in the Bihar. How basically the election in Bihar, these are matters we discuss in the classroom, but we can hear from his experience, his research. So I invite sir for the keynote address. So we will proceed up to 1:30, half an hour. Then we can discuss if there is any question or queries. So floor is yours, sir. You can sit down or you okay? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So, thank you, CIMP actor and Dr. Sivanand Senapati for the invitation. It's always a pleasure talking to students and talking about different ideas. Yeah, Dr. Senapati talked about I have walked a lot on Bihar, but I don't think so. So maybe a little bit of, and maybe the article he's talking about, that is not primarily I will be discussing. But again, after my presentation is over, if you have, I can talk about that. Right. So now my today's discussion is on CSR and community engagement. So I found the theme of the seminar is on engagement, right? Collaboration. So that is what. But here I'm not talking about engagement with certain organization. I'm talking about the main stakeholder of CSR, and that is community. Now, the major question that I'm trying to ask over here, we always see CSR as a philanthropy, and as a kind of means of distribution. But I'm going to ask that whether it is engaging with the community, whether also it's a means of increasing efficiency of CSR. So I'm going to try to see it from that perspective. Now, why this question arises? Because in CSR, what we say? In CSR, we say the companies are going to spend on social development. That's the basic thing about CSR. But again, who is responsible for social development? If you talk about institutions we have in the country and the world, who is primarily responsible for social development? So if you say social development is the responsibility of the government, right? So if that is, if government is responsible for social development, then what is the role of companies in it? So how does it matter? So that is and why this distinction is there? Because when we talk about companies or private from the very inception of the idea of industrial growth, industrial revolution, private's sole objective has been thought as profit maximization, right? And private is going to maximize the profit. How they will maximize profit? They will increase their efficiency to maximize. If you increase your efficiency, you will increase your profit. That is how private would work. So if that is the case, then how the private can contribute to some different domain, that is distribution. And if they contribute to this different domain, whether they will still remain efficient. And if it is not, if they don't remain efficient, then we would be losing society's resource unnecessarily. So that is the point. So from where we are going to start. To start with, so what is CSR? CSR is basically, if you talk about, it is private provision of public good, which is very strange in the understanding. why it is very strange? Because public good provision is always responsibility of the government. But CSR is, then what is the case for CSR? So case for, government is that, for the private is that, it has also been argued that government faces different kind of failures. They at times could not do things properly because of several constraints. One is technical constraint, one is fund constraints, resource constraints. There could be different constraints. So government should be there. But again, when you say government should be there, then the question is that can private do that? Now there has been a lot of debates, and institutionally speaking, most of the literature and most of the thought process says that private should not be there in CSR. Private should only focus on profit maximization. But some literature that came up after last 20 years, which says that, well, it cannot be the best, but let it consider is the second best solution. CSR can, private can invest in CSR, that would become a second best solution, not the prime best. I will talk about the second best solution. And that is how it can be. But it of course contradicts the age-old idea that there is a distinction. Private is not going to come into social domain. They are going to only profit maximize. Government is going to. So that is a point of contention. But again, then the question becomes when private can do, well, when shareholders think they should be doing it. All right, and that's why we are talking about that it should be, I mean, Dr. Chatterjee was talking about that it should be a board matter. Ultimately, it has to be in the board. But question is that apart from strictures which drives board members to take certain actions, why can there be a case that the shareholders would also think about CSR? The answer is probably there could be a case, all right, where shareholders can also think about CSR when they find through CSR they actually can make more profits, right? Because profit is the objective. Now this is very confusing how CSR can make profits. So that's what I'm trying to engage with, right? So please don't expect that I'm going to say some business enterprise by which suddenly with CSR there'll be profits. That's not the argument. The argument is a little more deeper than I'm trying to make the case for that. So okay. Now, what is the economic rationale for CSR being private? The economic rationale is that, well, as I said, government has different kinds of fund constraints. Governments actually engage into different kinds of inefficiencies. And there is a lot of literature on government failure, right, in social development. So for all these reasons, there are bureaucratic conservatism, right, and so they are at times less efficient. So that's why government is not always good in even the tasks they are supposed to do. Say social development. Then what is then if that is the case, we're talking about private would do. Is it feasible? So when you talk about feasibility, the major question comes to the cost and profits. If companies are going to make investment in social sector, that is definitely going to impact their cost structure and profit structure. Then what would lead them to invest? So that leads us to the fact that there could be two types of consumers. One is caring consumer and there is neutral consumer. Who are those caring consumers? Caring consumers are those who thinks about ESG. That means they talk about the environment, social aspects. They do care about that. I will buy the product where the companies have spent on social development. That means, in a way, the consumer is paying for social development. That is what I'm saying, caring customers. And there are certain other customers who are neutral customers. Neutral customers does not bother about anything else. So the argument is that the more allocation, more resources can be allocated for CSR activities if we have more of caring customers. If we have more of caring customers, it is possible to have more of, you can say, then they will demand more, corporate products which will have where the companies have invested in what you call the different kind of social activities, I will pay for them because they have invested on social activities. So if we have, then it is possible, because in the whole idea of allocation of resource in the economy, that primarily depends on where should resource go. It all depends that whether customers or people would like the resource to go there. If that is the case, if you have more of caring customers and more resources goes for CSR, then probably that is the case, and that can improve the efficiency in some sense. And that is what people say it's the second best solution. There's other reason why CSR by private can be supported. The other reason is that if I say the government is going to spend so much of money on, say, certain investments, certain social projects, but for that they have to collect taxes. There has to be a tax administration. So there is an expenses for tax administration. So all these managerial expenses we can club together. There is a cost. We call it transaction cost. The transaction cost of a social development program by the government can be exorbitantly high, whereas in case of private it might be much less. So managerial cost might be higher in government. You have to have bureaucrats, you need to have debates in the parliament for the expenses. There is a huge lot of cost. So for that reason, if that cost is very high, then there could be a case for CSR. And whereas in private it might be lesser. So one is that one can say, well, if there is more caring customers, it is good. And if there is the transaction costs are low, the transaction cost of the government is high, then also there could be a case for private intervention. There is another thing where private intervention can be important, and that is if the companies have economies of scope, right? What does economies of scope would mean is that, for example, I am an IT firm and I have CSR or any philanthropic program on educating people on, say, internet use. Then I have economies of scope. Why? Because the supply chain or my infrastructure or my efficiency skills can be used not only for IT firms' core business, but as well as same skills can be used as in social development. So that is how the economies of scope can expand. Similarly, I am a healthcare provider business, right? And I also give certain kind of health camps. I also organize health camps and health advisories, and I help people in mitigating diseases. So that is a CSR. So that is in the same line. But problem arises. Suppose I am a railway manufacturer or manufacturer of heavy industries, right? So I hardly have any means by which, with my expertise, I can directly help people. So economies of scope is less. So if I mandate that every company should have CSR, that may not be the right thing to do from certain perspective of economies of scope, because that company cannot use their facilities for delivering other kinds of social services. Some company can do, as I said, say IT and healthcare and many others, but some of them simply cannot do. So that is one point. And that is how the shareholders would also find it good. The other thing is that again, we know that some companies, while engaging into different kinds of activities, they also damage environment. At times, suppose I have built a port. If I have built a port, I must have damaged the environment, and it must have taken the livelihoods, age-old livelihoods of the fishermen. So there has to be a compensation. So if that is there, and if I have to run the business in the society, there has to be certain kind. So in that case, it can be done. So the point is that, well, there has to be caring consumers. In that case, you can do. There has to be economies of scope. Then only you can do. And there has to be a demand side pressure that I have damaged certain things. I'm basically replenishing them. So in these conditions, CSR is something which is recommended. But again, I'm just criticizing, it's a kind of critical view, is that when you have every company should make CSR, that does not match with this efficiency argument actually. Now, yeah, so basically, when there is an efficiency improvement, is that when consumers also select self-select CSR. So question is whether consumers select CSR or not. So efficiency would improve when consumers are going to select CSR. I'm going to pay for the product where the companies have CSR activities. Then there is an improvement. And if I do not have that kind of consumers, what is going to happen? I have to have some strictures, and that we call as regulations. And that is exactly we have. We have not tried to develop consumers, but we have used strictures and said that companies have to use regulations. And that brings us the relevance of why CSR is. It's not that always CSR is regulation is important. Regulation is important because we have not developed those consumers. And yes, and that is, as you understand, 2013 there is a CSR law, right? And problem is that it is a uniform legislation for everyone. Of course, there is a limit on profit and all that, which we will discuss, but that's a uniform. But again, I said, if you do not have economies of scope, if you do not have caring customers, and if you do not have, if you have not damaged the environment, and that's why you are replenishing, then actually this logic having a uniform goes against the logic of allocative efficiency. So, and this is contrary to the idea that CSR should be voluntary. CSR and CSR says it is supposed to be a kind of voluntary. This is contrary. So regulation, as yes, we have a unique structure of regulation, but that is very much contrary to the world. So why in the world otherwise they don't have regulation? Because it's contrary. Okay, so I'm not getting into these things. So we have a CSR law. You can find what is a CSR law. So it says that if you have certain profits more than certain amount, a turnover more than certain amount, then you are supposed to spend 2% of your profits on CSR activity. That's good. But again, it also says that you should have a CSR committee, right? And this committee should develop CSR policy. This is a kind of, that is how Dr. Chatterjee was telling. Now it is on the board. And it's a strategic move. It's not just philanthropy. It's a strategic move. Where from strategic moves comes? Because it's now there's a policy, CSR policy, and from policy there has to be some monitoring exercise. The board has to monitor whether this is happening or not. And there are certain subjects under Schedule 7, under which there are certain subjects and the investment has to be made, CSR spending. So again, very much regulated regime, right? And if the money is unspent, the board has to answer. So it's very much regulated. And at times, some of the high committees said that you have to pay penalties, right? Again, penalties was not implemented, but at least the boards have to answer. So after some time, CSR was there was a study around 2020. It was published, so maybe the study is done little before that. So what was the study asked that whether how many companies have done it? It has found that many companies have actually not able to spend 2% of their spending on CSR. This is it's not the scenario now. This I'm saying a few. But what is important is that it says that peer pressure of CSR and intrinsic motivation of CSR is lost after the regulation. So why? Because it is under certain kind of regime, right? Regulated regime. So that is lost in the CSR. But of course, it has changed a lot over a period of time. That some data also shows that, which I will talk about later. Now, when I talk about this, why the peer pressure and is not, and intrinsic motivation is gone? Because the people are not bothered about CSR. People are not bothered about CSR. Now, how can I make people bother about CSR? To bring that, I'm going to talk about something concept called co-production. Co-production means that you have government, say suppose the original concept of co-production comes from government. Government wants to implement certain education program, suppose. One way of doing is the government goes and says, this is the education syllabus, you are going to, my students, I'm going to implement on you. It doesn't matter, I'm not going to listen to you. That is one, that is pure top down. The other process is that I talk to you, I consult you, I also apply my wisdom, and we co-produce, right? That is, very much internationally also acclaimed model of program implementation. Now, the idea is that government is going to co-produce with citizens, but here I'm going to propose is that it can be instead of government, because privates are doing government's job now, right, in terms of social development. So companies can also co-produce with citizen. In other words, companies should not have this program, okay, this is the area where I'm going to implement, and just implement it. That should not be the case. Let the people analyze what is their problem. Let us talk, and maybe I have implemented certain program A over here, I will implement certain program B over somewhere else. So whether we can develop that kind of model, so that if we can do, then probably so-called intrinsic motivation of lack of CSR, which we can ensure only through regulations, that would be rectified. So, that the model of co-production, there are lots of international examples by which co-production has been successful, and this co-production should be institutionalized. That means it should be there in the process. It's not that I have done over here, I have not done over there. It's not like that. It is a process. It has to be done everywhere else, right? If it is institutionalized, it probably gives you more benefit. Now, have we done anything about that? Yes, we have done. Not that we have not done. First and foremost thing, the CSR policy, of course, Dr. Chatterjee was there, and he's thinking, and the group of people who were there, they initially from the very beginning, they have envisaged CSR is not about only funding. It is about professionalizing the development action, right? He also said that it is the strategic move. So when I say I'm going to go about it, so the profit, it's not just I give fund and that's it. It is about that the efficiency of the companies that has to go in the program implementation phase. And for that, if you look at Companies Act, if you look at different kind of committees, they have given different kind of recommendation, says that professional capability building, managerial strength, technical education of the companies to CSR. That's why you have CSR companies, and that's why the recruiters come and recruit you. Why? To professionalize, just not like that you go and implement it. And CSR policies are there, and then monitoring activities. The two high-level committees were there also, 2015, 2018. Both of them says that we have to leverage the technical skills of the companies. It's not just companies are going to spend money, but companies' technical skills have to be leveraged. So that was the major thing. And when it was amended in 21, so again emphasized about CSR professionals, development consultants. Again, there are certain kind of people are not always happy with development consultants, but CSR professionals, professionalizing CSR was. So it is in a way, it is not just funding, but yes, companies' own efficiencies have been used over there. So as I said, there are two this thing, but again, one most important thing, this high-level committees also said something very important thing, which is against what probably sometimes we do. That is, if we have some money, sometimes government say, well, you give it in this fund or that fund, we will make investment. It completely says that you should not do it, because CSR is not about only money. It is professionalizing, and the company's professional, professional skills should be used. And if you're just spending the money and giving the money to some fund of the government, and government spends on their own, then you are not doing CSR in the own spirit of professionalizing development. And But again, most of these CSR activities, government, whatever CSR rules, it's heavily on monitoring, reporting, and displaying CSR. Also, Dr. Chandraji, so display CSR, so that you are actually doing it. You are monitoring it. So, this is a professionalization part. But what will not have been done? I do not think that there is any good mention about how to develop CSR or how to develop demand for CSR or ESG from the consumers, from the community. There is no such, I didn't come across. If you come across, please let me know. So that is one of the, so it is not developing caring customers. In the whole world, whatever philanthropy we talk about, most of these things happen because they have developed caring customers. Are we developing, our whole framework is based on regulation and monitoring, not on caring customers. And of course, in the documentation, there is hardly any mention of co-production or anything sort of that. It is, yes, you are talking about not only money, but also you are talking about professional use of professionals, company professionals or professional skills, but you are not talking about how we understand from the community. Co-production means I will understand from the community, right? That process is not there. So, as I said, CSR, with a lot of initiatives, CSR scenario has improved. If you look at present, I just took it snapshot from the company's website, right? CSR website, it says that more than 50% you can say companies are now paying CSR and CSR spend more than their prescribed limit, so it has improved a lot. Very less are there who are not doing it. So days of 2020s are, I mean early days are gone. But this is what is, you can say, the model of co-production. And what is that? You have program, development program. Companies have to give their professional skills. Communities, I have to learn from the communities. Communities must have been doing something. I will give you some examples a little while later. Are we learning from the communities? Most of the cases, in most of the government programs, forget about CSR. Any programs, we are not learning from the communities, right? And that is how we are not doing the CSR, the co-production as such. And how we are making companies to spend through regulations or through monitoring, which has a cost. Regulation has a cost. And the benefits are going to the community. That is the process. But this process don't have, in actual reality, don't have any connect. We are not getting anything from the community. That is not there. That is zero. And when you have high regulation and monitoring, what you also have, monitoring framework, high regulation, monitoring, any sort of monitoring in this world has a cost. If I say this campus is no smoking campus, the first monitoring cost is somebody has to see whether people are smoking or not. So there is a cost of that. And that monitoring cost can make the CSR highly inefficient. More resources going into development, but it is inefficient. Why? Because the people are not buying CSR. You are getting my, we are doing CSR because of regulations. Community is not buying. Right. So how much time I have? 5 minutes. Okay. So I'm just going through some of those studies. We did some studies, little back, some empirical studies, and we said on CSR on public health, education, as well as environment. I'm just trying to say, and I'm just giving some, so there are some names, but these all are good organizations. I have no problem, but the point we are just looking into their frameworks. So from that, so in public health, I'm comparing these two. Nandaghar project of Vedanta vis-a-vis Didi Bandhu project of Tata Steel in Jharkhand. Now, Nandaghar was a very much infrastructure-driven project. Vedanta has used all their mights in Nandaghar. But the basic problems of Anganwaris and the basic community workers, that remains same. So basically, as long as this you are investing and keep on investing, it will go. But after that time, how to maintain the infrastructure, what will happen after 10 years, nobody knows. On the contrary, there is Didi Bandhu project in, so they actually initiated a very low cost project. Didi Bandhu, you know what is that? Didi Bandhu is, in English we will call barefoot doctors. So I train a Didi Bandhu. Didi Bandhu means basically these are husband wives, couples. And they have been trained, if there is a diarrhea, what you are going to do. Most of the people, it was found, even for simple diarrhea, they don't know what to do. That was the basic problem. It's not any high level. So they have given very simple educations. And as a result, it has been found, it has worked well. This Didi Bandhu project started in mid-19s and went next 10 years or 15 years, right? And as a result, in Tata Steel's own hospitals, the number of people admitted for diarrhea went down gradually, drastically. So that is, in the second case, it is co-production. In the first case, it is a heritage, although with a lot of goods in this, it's a top-down. Similarly, in case of education, I'm comparing some project in so railway PSU has started education program where when we found that children who are the first generation learners are wearing ties, ties, and actually you can come, there is no problem of wearing tie, right? But the point is that, first of all, is that you are imparted some education where it is useful only when you become graduate or more than that. But many people within this school children, first generation learner, would not reach that level. As a result, when you drop out, what do you take out of the time spent in your education? Maybe not much. So how can we do that? So there is another model we have seen in Northeast India where actually more skills have been taken, more learning, the programs have learned more from the community. That this is what we can do for, and this is what the community does for their livelihood. How can we make betterment? So this is the products they produce in the livelihood, but there is no market. How can we channelize to the market? That will probably give you more sustainable livelihood activities. So that's the second thing. Third, I'm going to talk about is that regarding environment. So there was a NTPC, they have in Varanasi. Varanasi became very clean city. One of the reasons NTPC invested a lot. But again, heavily dependent on NTPC's investment. Community behavior, whether there is change, there is a doubt. I'm giving a different example. This is a very good example of co-production. The Nuclear Power Corporation of India, they developed certain kind of fishing villages in, they developed something called artificial reefs in fishing villages. Reefs means catchment. So when fishes are, you have to catch fish, right? For that you have to create a trap. What is the trap? So there have to be certain kind of plants in that trap so that fishes can stay, they can grow, and then you trap them. So it's a, so it is, the point is that why I'm saying it's a good example, because this is a traditional practice, but that traditional practice used to tree logs, right? Now, nowadays if you start using tree logs, what will happen? It will be very inefficient. You have to remove the logs, all these problems are there. So companies created artificial reefs, but original idea was very much traditional. So companies, program implementing authorities, they actually learn from the community. So so that is what is this thing. So in the interest of time, so now I'm just then how can we make people participate in good? Now we can very easily say people would come and participate. If you ask people to come, then what would come? Right. Why? There is an opportunity cost of time. I will spend time, energy, why would I? What would I get? How do I know? I don't know. You have called, who are you? Oh, you are coming from this group. Okay, so what? I have seen so many babus and so many big people coming, but they have not done anything good for us. So how do you do that? One way we always keep on calling people's participation. But most of the cases we don't understand what is people's participation. People's participation is not just telling people this is what you are going to and what is your feedback. That is not, that is basically, sorry. That is basically a consultation. People's participation means you have, the people are going to analyze the problem and they are going to respond to the problem. And they are going to say this is what you do. Then you give your understanding, and that is how co-production takes place. So we have to understand that, and that is how it should be. In the interest of time, I will skip many things. I will go over here. I'll skip this one. So in case of developing people's participation and co-production, as an implementer, what should you do? One is that alignment of interest, whether our interest and their interests are aligned. Many of the cases it does not happen. I can give you many examples later on. If you ask me, I can give you examples. There are many cases it's not aligned. Fairness. Fairness is very typical thing. What is that? Okay, you are saying, no, it does not matter. This has to be there. I am saying, I am more knowledgeable than you. I am more this is unfair. Once you start that, co-production is, you can forget about co-production. Cohesion. Cohesion is one that, well, you come in a different race and you are different. They don't mingle, so they are of different identities. If your identities are different, you don't develop a trust system. Once you do not develop a trust system, co-production is not possible. And that's why we call, even the CSR policy calls, we have to develop NGOs. But I also, with a pinch of salt, I will say, sometimes NGOs also behaves like babus, right? As if you are some external person, very highly educated and trained, right? So that is another problem. Then satisfactory different terms and conditions. So I'll just talk about a little bit of terms. So there could be some agreements. If you ask me later, I will say, what kind of agreements we have seen, different kinds of community engagements. It is possible to have these agreements. Agreements can derive the broader objectives, terms, TORs, legislations if required, changes can happen. So all these are formal processes. There could be some informal processes, for example, norms, community norms can be developed, right? So how it can be developed, we can also talk about this later on. So overall, what I'm trying to say, this is my last. So basically we are talking about this is our present framework. What this suggested framework is that we should develop formal and informal rules with the communities, or through our engagements, not that we go and impose the rules. Through co-production mechanism, community and us, or the implementers, should develop certain kind of engagement rules, formal and informal. As we develop, we can do away with regulation, right? Once regulation, or we can reduce its importance. Once is there, lot of expenses we make for regulations, monitoring it. I don't know, we talk about impact evaluation, just a minute, right? Impact evaluation, you know how much money goes for impact evaluation? And you talk to those who work on the field, many of them say that this was not so much important, because we know the problems and we need resources to address the problems. But the point is, the impact evaluation, particularly in today's world, we have RCTs, randomized control trials. It's a hugely expensive things, right? So to what extent they give results, that's a point of question. Now, once we do that, we can bring more efficiency into the system. So the systems can become more efficient. And in this process, we can also create more a kind of caring customers, right? Customers, because now if we have more engaged with the people, so there could be a nudging process. People would become more caring about CSR activity, right? So that would require less of regulation. So that is so in terms of conclusions, we should be very clear about co-production, right? Co-production should be there, and for that there should be community participation, trust building measures. CSR rules and regulations should, now all highest level community should talk about more of co-production, or talks in line of that, not just monitoring what you are doing. So for this, as I just said, your alignment of interest, fairness, cohesion, all these things to be looked into. So more community engagement, as I said, can nudge people to become more caring customers. So now people would demand more for CSR. So in fact, in the whole world, outside India, if you look at philanthropy, the people pay for philanthropy, right? So that we can achieve, and in terms of economic efficiency, that can improve. So that is where I will stop, and thank you for listening. So if you have questions, I can address.
But co-production and caring customer approach and ask for more participation. That's now your opportunity to participate in the discussion. So you can take few questions. So in the class we discuss about macro production and consumption. So here another approach is coming co-production. Just think, so from that you can raise some questions. So what is the co-production is discussed here, how CSR can come there. So any question is coming to your mind, you can raise, we can discuss. Yes, Professor Samanta. Since he teaches public policy in our 6th semester, so I think the senior student can take these points.
And I must appreciate your ambition that develop concerned customers who will actually demand that, okay, I'll buy from those companies who will do certain things. Okay, so that is very extreme, bit ambitious, but we should start with something ambition. First thing is that what I have observed in your presentation is that first thing is that the defining this private provision of public good. Okay, because when we teach, when we go for the typical textbook definition of public good and private goods, those which are actually being provided through typical CSR motives, they are not public good, definitely. They are basically private goods. Okay, we have a concept of public provision of private goods, which we teach when government involves in providing healthcare and education. These are typical private good, but still government get involved. But when you see things like whatever you are saying, that Vedanta, they are organizing and they are very good in distributing filters and other things, but these are filters and other things, they are typical private goods. Okay, whether there is no problem with distributing all those things. But it is when they're failing when the goods which are not typical private good type of things, there the challenges are being faced. Okay. Similar type of things which we definitely appreciate the introduction of co-production of Eleanor Ostrom. We all have studied her. Okay. Thing is that community participation, what I believe, is a process. And community participation is not a job of any community. You need, what I feel, I believe in this Robert Chambers idea of community participation. Okay, so when we talk about community participation, that needs a process to make the community participation eligible. Okay, because that is a process to which you need to make aware about the things, and then only co-production possible. If you go by the typical say hierarchy of community participation, we have seen this one. I can remember one Sarasi white paper where he talks about 3-4 types of community participation. The last one is the transformative, where people actually get engaged, what you are talking about as a co-production. People get engaged with the service provider to produce typical services, basically. Okay. These are my observations. Okay, we can discuss more on this, but I think the definition should be more so that people can engage more enthusiastically. And second thing is that I definitely appreciate your concept of this developing concerned customers. That is very good. Thank you, thank you, sir.
So I'll just
right.
Say, for example, if I say poverty, right? Anti-poverty measure is a public good, right? But how do you address anti-poverty? Why people are poor? People are poor because they don't have food. Now, what kind of commodity is food? That's a private good.
Yeah.
So the point is that the intervention of anyone, any government, if they want to address some public good, many of the cases they have to go through private channels only.
Yeah.
So that is one of the tricky area, and that is how the CSR becomes.
What I feel, let CSR be engaged in providing private goods only. Okay, so there are gaps in providing private goods. If you can distribute some filters, if you can have some more tube wells and other schools, that is okay, a company, but that is okay. And what I like the concept of this barefoot doctors. See, barefoot doctors are not a new concept. If you read Amartya Sen's 96 book of Development and Freedom, Amartya Sen talks about two types of initiatives.
So can I just
sorry. Professor को mic दोगे तो छोड़ेंगे नहीं.
Can I just add one more discussion there? Like we are keep hearing Anant Ambani's contribution in Gujarat plantation drive. So can we consider that kind example of a kind of public provision or private provision, or how we see the reliance in terms of the co-production or the aspect which you discussed?
So many of this work that as you were talking about, so many of the cases, I mean, success on those kinds of work cannot be achieved without community engagement, without a co-production model, right? So what to produce, because ultimately because the community has to manage the plantation work. Right. So yes, to some extent, I'll say more of community engagement is there. But again, even when you say there are failures also, these failures have occurred because community did not give kind of support they are supposed to give. So because of it, they felt no, rather than spending time here, I will migrate. Right. So different. Whereas in case of, if you talk about the case of Vedanta, so it is highly investment into it, but how community is going to take it forward. So is there any plan for that? And how you are addressing Anganwadi issues, Anganwadi workers issues. So that is the most important issue. So yeah. So that is yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. Yes, sir. Can I?
Yeah, we can take one question from here. So 3 questions we can add. So first,
okay, and it is a social responsibility towards community that we are giving through. And the strategic framework that you showed to me, it was related to that we don't revert back as a community, or the consumers are not reverting back, right? And that's what you showed to us. But in case of ESG, or when the big industries or organization, when they are implicating their CSR policies into, or 2% of percentage wherever they were putting a strategic framework towards financial statements. And at the end, they actually look at result analysis. And that result analysis comes from community. So when we comes to talking about, is it caring for customers, or you're saying caring customers? They are two different ideas.
Okay.
That you're talking about.
Sir, we can take all questions to
Nalanda University. So my question to you is, you said about that a co-production where companies should align their interest with the community. But as a consumer, if I think, what I feel is that community want products with good efficiency, with good livability, and on cheap prices. So CSR is not only a social service, not only a community service, what I understood, it's also a business strategy. So what can we do with the profit part of the company? Because company produce goods for the profit also. So how can this co-production be carried upon if the company will align the total interest with the community interest? Thank you very much.
So can I take these 2 questions? I am distinguishing community and customers. Communities are not my customers. When I say caring customers, they are not community. They are customers who care for ESG, who care for social development. So when I pay whatever 100 rupees, I know that I deliberately choose to pay 100 rupees to you, vis-a-vis you 80 rupees, and 20 rupees I am deliberately spending for social causes. So I'm talking about that as a caring customers. Right, where the customer chooses to spend, for example, I choose to spend for, say, certain kind of, say, at times, although it reduces the cost, instead of paper, I use, suppose somebody uses the electronic mode. So I choose to do that. So whether there could be a that kind of choice. So I'm saying that in this case, the ESG becomes my choice rather than a compulsion. It's not a compulsion, it's a choice. Can we make transform? Because that is the whole logic of public philanthropy and CSR, that if I spend more on this. So one is that when you see Tata, say for example, when you see a Tata product, right, of course before the fiasco of air, right, you tend to trust it, or Tata product, it should be good. One of the reasons you trust it, you know that Tata has also invested in different kind of social development. That develops, it takes a long time. That develops a trustworthy relationship with the community, and that goes. So I think it also addresses your answer, that there are two different things, customers and community, right? And when customers see the community being improved by the companies, they tend to spend for that. Could be possibilities. So maybe you can see, if you talk about, that's why I'm saying Tata is one of the examples, right? So it can go, yeah.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. You are talking about the caring customer, but Mr. Bhaskar Chatterjee Sahab say that most of the people didn't have the knowledge about the CSR. So how can they, how the company, how the government create the knowledge in the mind of the people that they can invest in that product? This is the product that is going to contribute more in the CSR. How can these things develop in the mind of the customer, sir? Because most of the people didn't have the knowledge about the CSR. And sorry to say that, but sir, you mentioned 2 and 3 groups which are doing lots of work for the community, but I didn't have the knowledge about that things also, sir. I'm doing MBA, but I didn't have the knowledge, sir. But those people who didn't have that much of knowledge, that didn't pass, that didn't that much of literacy rate, how can they know about the company? How can they contribute towards buy that country product as compared to the other companies, sir?
Yeah. So again, they are different groups I'm talking about. Customers, well, are part of larger community, but community over here means those who needs again. So I can pay extra bucks, some extra money for a certain product only when I'm not poor, right? So I am not the targeted group who will receive social development, right? But I pay it because I see, because I'm, as an individual, I also feel that the community should also develop, because I'm also part of the community, larger community. Right. So if I see, well, somebody, suppose I am non-poor, somebody is poor, that the condition of the poor are improving because of company's intervention. So I may tend to pay a little bit more for the company if they ask, if they little bit hike the prices, and if actually I can see that it goes to the community, that is possible, right? So that is how we can create a caring customer. So if there is a strategy where I can show people that that is how your money is going to the people, right, and you pay for it, right, rather than regulating the money spending. So that is how customers tend create a demand for social investment. So I'm not supposed to, I don't need any company CSR help, but I am supposed to give money to the company as a customer.
Thank you, thank you. I think in your marketing classes, this will be more clear when you will attend this thing, your special papers from Professor Murthy and Professor Mohanty. So what sir has just started, you have to elaborate it, you have to take it to other table from the marketing session. I hope, sir?
Yes, sir, sure.
So thank you, sir, for enlightening us with and introducing or co-exploring with us the co-production approach and discussing about the caring customer. So now over to the members for other proceedings. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
May I now request Senapati sir to kindly felicitate Indranil Day sir with a memento. Thank you, sir.